I really love the banjo, not because of how it sounds, but because of how it feels when you play it. It has this weird connectivity because it has 4 strings up top and 5 strings down bottom. And when you play, you have 4 fingers up here and 5 fingers down here. It matches the way you sit and it feels like it hugs you. My name is Daniel Graham, and I'm a professor here at Georgetown College in Georgetown, Kentucky, where I teach sculpture and printmaking. My shop is I'm not from Kentucky. Originally, I grew up in the military, so I moved around my whole life. And so after living here for about 10 years, I thought for some reason it just made sense that I should know a song or two on a banjo. Family plays a really big part in what I do. And not just why I play music, but the materials really matter to me. My grandfather was a clock repairman, and he had a walnut shelf in his shop. And when I went to visit him one time, he took the shelf literally off the wall and was like, here, you can make something out of this. And it was really special because I kind of thought he realized he was near the end of his time. And this was the beginning of something new for his material. This was one of the first banjos that I actually ever made, and that's what he passed along to me. And so when I made a banjo out of it, every time I play that, I kind of feel that he's around. I kind of connect back to that space, and it kind of sparks memories of that place. Those become very special, but also the idea of building kind of heirlooms for my kids. I once had someone tell me that, and it really bothered me for a while. They're like, how do you feel about making heirlooms? And I thought, oh, like heirloom style furniture. And they were like, no, like your grandkids are going to fight over some of these one day. And I was like, I don't want that pressure. Like, I don't want to think about that. But I started to, and it really helped in a way of like what really matters. And so I'll make something for my kid to play on or my wife to play, knowing that even if she doesn't play it, someone down the line will hold that and feel the family history kind of coming through it. You have the neck of a banjo, and down the neck you have the pegs, and this is called a 5th peg. This is actually the shortest string on the banjo that's primarily played with the thumb. All the other strings are played with fingers. And down here you have what's called the pot. This is the bottom of your banjo. And in the back here is something called a tone ring. This is what the skin rides along, and that tone ring is actually the top 2 inches of a stovepipe cut off. This is a West Virginia style Appalachian mountain banjo. A handful of years into building instruments, I met a guy named John Reister. And John Reister was a very pivotal person in my life and still is. He's a very good friend of mine. And he's the one that actually taught me how to play banjo.
I always wanted to build something. I just kind of figured banjos would be what it was, but there's so many people that build banjos and there's not that many that build fiddles, so I thought that'd be a good niche for me.
But he did an apprenticeship with a man named Tommy Case through the Kentucky Arts Council of how to build a fiddle or a violin. And it was really, really cool. And I thought, I would love to do that. And so the next year I applied with Tommy, and we were granted this apprenticeship. He taught me quite a bit about the craft, from very small details all the way through the finished instrument. And there's so many steps in a violin and a fiddle that I had no idea about. And so it was a real growing opportunity for me as an artist and a woodworker. It kind of opened up my eyes to different ways of making things as well. And I use those tools more now as a experimental or artistic craft. So I'm making instruments that have some meaning in them beyond the instrument itself. Part of the reason I also started playing banjo was because Alzheimer's runs in my family. And that's what ultimately killed one of my grandfathers. It was very powerful to me to see kind of his mind degenerate quite a bit. Through research, they talk about learning a language or keeping the mind active or playing an instrument helps stave off some of the effects or presentations of Alzheimer's. So I thought, well, man, I need to start taking care of myself now for my kids later. One of those ways was to pick up an instrument. I think there are incredible benefits to playing an instrument, whether that's a banjo or a violin or anything. I think it's a good mental challenge. And as far as Alzheimer's goes, I won't know. I think, we'll know near the end of life if that's helped. But I think in the meantime, one of the things I didn't expect it to happen was the amount of people that you would meet through it. I really genuinely expected to kind of just pick this on a front porch and goof around on it and learn some songs. By opening up to other people, meeting communities of players, going to music festivals, I can't tell you how many times people come up to me and they're like, my father played a banjo, or like my grandfather played a banjo, or my grandmother used to have a banjo. And they would tell these stories as if they're like smelling their mother's cooking. They would like talk about how they feel this and they can still hear it. And there's something beautiful about that. And so I know that I'm hoping to create that in my household. So I hope my kids one day when I'm gone will say, my grandfather used to play a banjo, or my dad used to play a banjo, and kind of relive that in some way. One student told me one time that I was an acquired taste, and I kind of took that as a really compliment for a while. And she may not have meant it at the time, but I thought it was really cool that, like, well, yeah, just like people drink coffee all the time. And I don't like coffee, but you may like coffee. And so, so I think there's something wonderful about a quirky, fun banjo, because isn't that what we all are, right? We're not these super fine-tuned instruments. When I make these objects to play music, I think about that a lot. I think about how these are kind of portraits of myself or other people, that they're not perfect. They're all individually unique. They all sound so different. And we should celebrate how different all of those things are. They ended up becoming something like the Wild Wild West of instruments, because there aren't a lot of rules to them. Like a guitar has to be a very specific type of thing, but a banjo could have 6 strings or 3 strings or 5 strings or 4 strings. It could be any length. It could be made out of a tin can or something really high end. Well, some of these instruments behind me are made as examples of historic instruments, but most oftentimes it's to itch a curiosity. And so that's how some of these things started. Was I would make one and I thought, well, now I want one that's kind of small. So I'd make one that's kind of small. And well, let's make one that's really deep and low, or made out of a gourd, or made out of ceramics, or made out of glass. It's kind of this experimental place. And so I don't think there's an end to that, and that's the problem. What comes first is always the idea, whether it's the shape or the type of skin that's maybe on the banjo, or what it's made out of, or a very kind of sentimental material. Whether it's a piece of wood that inspires me or an idea that inspires me to make one of these, that's what comes first. And then after that, it splits down to, do I want to make this with traditional hand tools like it was made in the past? Do I want to try and make something more contemporary? Or is there a nice mixed media of those two things? So some of these banjos I've made with no power, no electricity whatsoever. It's just all complete hand tools. And that's what had been done a long time ago. This one is a Kentucky octagon banjo. It's the only banjo I know that stands up on its own, naturally. But this one is made completely without electricity. It's made 100% with hand tools, and it's only made with 5 tools. Just like the gourd banjo that I have over here. It's made from a vegetable you would grow in your garden, and season over a year, and then add a neck to it and stretch a skin over it. And that skin was whatever you had available. So I think the process starts with an idea and then goes down what best fits that idea, a traditional approach or maybe a more contemporary approach. So my tools kind of are a history of myself in some way. I mean that because I've had people gift them to me, friends and family members that have passed away that have some of their tools. But also, I spent some time in Japan years and years ago. So I have hand planes from my time in Japan. These are handmade, wonderful tools. And so they're a little bit of a portrait of what I do and where I've been. I always tell people that the advice I always give people is like, you don't start with a tool collection. If you buy everything you think you need, you're not going to use any of it, And so you always start with a small project or a small idea, and you get a tool and you get a skill. And then the next project, you add a skill and you add a tool. And then over 25 years, you have everything that you use, tailored to what you do. And you have 25 years worth of skill that you've built. Because a lot of the tools take that long to learn how to use properly. So I'd say instruments unexpectedly have kind of taken me all over the place to unique places that I didn't see coming. My artistic career has been a lot in galleries and museums and all over the place. But this kind of took me to campgrounds and campsites and music festivals and meeting old timers, which makes me super, super happy, right? It's the exact opposite of like a stuffy gallery, is to be outside by a campfire with like an 80-year-old man playing a banjo. Just so it kind of gave me a whole range that I think has helped me kind of become a better person in some way. I know it sounds odd, but like it keeps you humble just to hang out with old timers. It keeps you humble just to sit around and play music that's been around longer than you have. And so I think instruments have this way of taking you down a journey that you didn't expect. I really love the banjo. It feels very ancient at the same time as feeling very new. And I think that even though if you're not good at it, it still sounds beautiful. If you're great at it, it sounds the same to me. And so I think there's something about the performative act of playing it and meditating on it and working through it, just the repetitive patterns. It brings peace into your day, at least how I like to play.